You've been told that the fastest way to build wealth is to start a business. And honestly, that sounds right. But building something from scratch, grinding it out, putting in the hard startup hours, that takes a ton of work. And I get why people believe that. But here's something that I find really interesting. If you look at the top Forbes 100, not a single person on that list got there just by starting a business alone. Every single one of them did acquisitions along the way. All of them, every single one of them. Amazon did over 110 acquisitions. Google did over 200 acquisitions. So the question you should be asking yourself, at least that is worth considering, if starting a business is the path to wealth, why are the wealthiest people in the world all choosing a different path? My name's Trent Lee. I'm the number one business broker in the country, actually ranked number one in the entire country for the most closed transactions. At this point, I've done over 600 transactions. I make these videos because I've seen what happens when buyers get into deals without enough information, getting into it for the first time, they mess it up, something goes wrong. I see what works, I see what fails, and what quietly hurts people after the deal closes that they didn't know beforehand. And my goal is simple. I want you to learn the easy way instead of making a mistake the hard way. What I'm going to walk you through today is something that most people never think to look for. All around you now are businesses that you could buy. Most people just don't recognize them or even know that they're for sale. They look like ordinary rocks when they're actually diamonds. Let me show you how to start seeing them so that you can know what to look for because you'll start seeing them all over the place once you know what to look for. Here's what's fascinating about acquisitions versus startups. But did you know the SBA default rate for most businesses is less than 5%, which means 95% of acquisitions work over time and don't end up defaulting if they're doing an SBA loan. And when you look at the acquisitions done with seller financing, the failure rate is slightly higher, about 13%. That's not a small difference. It's a complete game changer when you look at the startup risk rate versus the acquisition, whether by SBA loan or seller financing. And the math makes sense when you think about it. When you start a business, you're building everything from zero: zero customers, zero reputation, zero cash flow, no systems, probably very little, if none, if zero employees. When you buy a business, you're buying something that already works. Customers already exist, revenue is already flowing. The hard part, the launching, the proving the concept, the market, the name, the reputation, the goodwill, the core product and service has already been done. You're not betting on hope, you're buying a reality. So let me slow down just for a minute because I think this part is so important and it changes how you look at deals. The mental model I want you to carry with you is this: you don't buy hopes and dreams, you buy reality and proven profits. If the business isn't profitable today, I'm not betting that I can fix it. That's just not a pass on that business. If you haven't run a business before, you probably shouldn't be betting on that either, at least not on your first rodeo. Now, so we're going to be looking for businesses that already work, that already make money, that already have customers who love them and have a historical, profitable history that we can really back into. Now, here's the question most people never think to ask. Why would a business owner sell you a business using the profits of that business to fund the deal? Why would they essentially finance the purchase price using seller financing? And it's more common than most people realize. About 60% of all small businesses include some form of it. Let me give you a real world example of why a seller would do this. I have a business owner that wants $1 million for their business. The bank looks at it and says it's probably only worth about $750,000. So now your loan of $750,000, let's say at 8% interest, over the life of the loan, you're paying around $80,000 a year in interest alone. The seller gets $75,000 if you go through bank financing. That's one option. Here's the deal that I've seen work differently. You go back to the seller and say, "Look, what if I gave you 1.1 million instead of 750,000? But instead of going through the bank, you carry the note." So no bank, no long, arduous SBA closing process, no piles of paperwork. You get the money potentially at a lower interest rate or even something maybe similar to that, and we close in 2 to 3 weeks. The seller walks away with a higher Purchase price, once you factor in the purchase price plus the interest, that's almost double what he would have gotten if we just went through the bank and got all of the cash up front. So the answer to why a seller would do this is pretty simple. It's because it's better for them financially, assuming that the buyer pays that entire thing off plus the interest. So here's the part that a lot of people miss. There's also a tax advantage to the seller. If they take a lump sum from the bank deal, they pay capital gains on all of it right now in one shot. If they do seller financing, those payments are spread over, let's say, 10 years. By then, they're out of the business, likely in a lower tax bracket. They've saved potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. So we're not asking the seller to do us a favor. We're showing them a better deal than what they could get if they got a bank financing and got all of the money up front. Now, not every seller is a good fit for this kind of deal, and this is where I see buyers make real mistakes. They go after the wrong type of seller. Some sellers just want the money up front, and that's totally fine. That's not the right seller if you're looking at buying a business with seller financing. The right seller for seller financing deals is typically older, 50, 60, probably older than that, and they're running a simple, boring business that they've owned for 10, 20, 30 years. They're tired, they want to retire, and they often want more than what the bank can justify their business is worth. They want the income stream over time. That's your ideal seller. The wrong seller is a young, ambitious, growing fast with multiple offers on the table. Stay away from those. Those ones can go through SBA financing to SBA buyers. They don't need you, and they probably are not open to seller financing because they'd rather have the cash up front because they're young, ambitious, and growing. They don't want the income stream. We're looking for old, stable, slow growing businesses, not fast, sexy, hot businesses that everyone is chasing. Now, let me walk you through what I call the seller financing avatar. The longer the business has been around, the better. We want businesses doing under $1 million in profit because above that, private equity groups start to show up as sophisticated buyers who have either all capital or can come in with SBA financing or alternative financing and close quickly. We don't want to compete with them. What we want is low competition in the industry, brick and mortar over online businesses. We want an owner who's been running it personally for years. We want someone with no obvious successor, no son or daughter ready to take it over. We want someone who's older, who may have honestly messy financials, who wants more than what the bank is willing to offer, who doesn't have a pile of lined up buyers waiting for them. The more of those boxes you can check, the better the deal is likely going to be for a seller financing transaction. Now, let's talk about where to find these businesses. There are two paths: on market deals and off market deals. On market deals means they're probably listing it publicly, either themselves or with a broker. Think of something like bizbuysell.com. Businesses listed there are on market. The owner usually has a broker. The financials are probably somewhat prepared. They're expecting buyers to reach out. The upside is speed and transparency in this case. The downside is there's a lot more competition and slightly less flexible terms on the deal structure because a broker has probably priced it, ideally, if it's a good broker, probably priced it to get SBA approval and to get the cash upfront. Off market means the business isn't listed anywhere. The owner hasn't even decided if they want to sell it yet. But here's what I found doing this for a long time. I've stood in rooms full of business owners and asked who would sell their business at the right price and at the right terms. Almost everyone puts their hand up because at some point they're tired, they're burned out, they're ready to move on. If they got the right deal, the right price, and the terms, they would sell it. Honestly, every business owner has a price. There are probably 20 to 40 million businesses in the US that would sell under the right conditions right now. Only about 56,000 are listed publicly at any given time. So the off market opportunity is huge, it's enormous. This is where it helps to understand what I call the 7 Ds, the reason sellers are actually ready to sell. Departure, they want to retire and move to somewhere warm. Divorce, they need to split up and sell the assets. Disease, they've got health issues, concerns, health challenges, or someone in their family has health challenges. Disagreements between business partners often comes up. Distress, is another one. The business is struggling and they'd rather sell than try and turn it around and keep fighting. Those ones I'm not a fan of. You don't want to go after those. And then finally, death. The owner passes away, the business goes into probate, or another partner is running it and they just don't have it in them to continue to run it on their own. Those are the 7 Ds you want to look for. And understanding these motivators helps you have a real conversation with the seller, not just a transaction, because you've got to connect with the seller and really help them understand why you're the right buyer because they're taking a risk on you if they're offering seller financing. Let me give you a quick example of how this plays out. I know a buyer, and I'll just call him John, so I don't disclose any names here. And he looked at over 50 businesses at a high level. From those, he narrowed it down to 20 that made financial sense, that were priced appropriately to explore further. From the 20, he got serious about five and submitted letters of intent. After deep due diligence, he made offers on three of them, and he actually bought one. That's a 50 to 1 ratio, and he closed his deal in about 90 to 100 days from start to finish. Here's the part I want to be honest about. The process works, but only if you're specific about what you're going into. If someone asks me what kind of business I want to buy, and the answer is any business, anywhere, whatever it costs, I just want to find the right deal, that person's not really buying a business anytime soon. You've got to get very much more specific. You need to know why and what industries you have experience in and why you're a good fit. What industry do you have direct experience in? What industry can you operate in? What do you know about? What location? What revenue range? How much can you put down? Seller financing is great, but are they going to finance 100% to you? Probably not. How much do you need the business to pay you annually? When you define those things up front, every deal starts to have a filter and you can easily determine if it meets your criteria. And if it doesn't, then you can move on fast. The deal box is what I'll use to define all of that. Think of that as your buying criteria. When you're searching for a home, bedrooms, price range, neighborhood, school, district, all of those things are things that you have thought about. You're not just scrolling through every listing in the country. You filter it down to what actually fits your life or your family's life. A business deal box works the exact same way. Location, revenue, profit, industry, and owner involvement. You set all those parameters and you start to narrow it down so you know what to look for. Once you have a deal box identified, you can start searching. I use a number of sites like bizbuysell.com or businessforsale.com. And you can look at all the different businesses and then filter them by location, by size, by revenue, by industry. And then you just start going through, and you can even set up alerts so that they hit your inbox when new listings come up that match your deal box. Now, one thing that's worth understanding: brokers often are a great resource to find these type of businesses, but you can't reach out to them and say, I'm industry agnostic. That's the first sign that you are telling a business broker you are inexperienced and you don't really know what you're looking for. You haven't thought through to really define why you as a buyer are a good fit, not just buying any business out there. So you want to work with a number of business brokers as well if you're looking for on-market deals. For off-market deals, the approach is totally different. Think of it like sending out handwritten notes to homeowners in a neighborhood that you love, saying you're interested in buying in that area and would they ever consider selling. You're not pressuring, you're just opening the door. You're asking for an invitation to see if they're open to a conversation. With businesses, that might mean direct outreach to the owner in a targeted industry. Start building relationships before you even know if a deal is on the table. Or you can work with brokers who might know about deals that are off market or deals that are you can get access to before they actually go on the market. Now, here's a question worth sitting and considering for a little while. Is this a fair deal for the seller? I've had buyers ask me that, and I think it is a really healthy question because the way I see it, and this is a perspective I've carried for a long time. Buying a neglected or ready to exit business and giving it new life is not taking advantage of someone, it's solving a real problem for them. Most of these owners have built something valuable and they just don't know how to exit. They don't know what it's worth, they don't know who to exit to. You're not exploiting that. You're offering them a solution, but you need to be fair to them as well. The buyers who do this well are the ones who walk with integrity, transparency, and genuine care and trust for the employees and the customers that they're inheriting. This matters more than people think. Sellers aren't always motivated purely just by price. They want to know that the deal is going to close. They want to know that their customers will be taken care of. They want to know that their employees, some of which have been there for decades, will continue to have employment. They'll continue to be able to support and take care of their family, the community that the business is been serving. They want to make sure all of that matters. So, let me give you one question that I use as a deal filter, a test that I always come back to. Before you go deep on any deal, ask yourself, does this business at this price generate enough cash flow to pay me a reasonable income, cover myself as an operator, because ideally you're buying yourself a job in this case. So you need to service the debt, still pay yourself a livable wage, and have enough left over for working capital, expansion capital, and to be able to take care of those customers, the employees, the staff. If the answer is no, then just walk away. It doesn't matter how interesting the business is. It doesn't matter how much you like the seller. It doesn't matter how good the terms are. If the math doesn't work to begin with, it just doesn't work. So don't end up buying it. That's the one question that will save you a lot of pain from making a mistake. So if you found this business helpful and if you're serious about learning how to find, analyze, and buy a small business the right way, I have a free school community with over 30 hours of step-by-step video education covering every part of the process. It's free to join. The link's in the description. There's no catch, there's no sales pressure. It's just real education from someone who's been in the middle of these deals for a long time. Remember, deals reward disciplined action. Those who know what they want and move with intention and don't get distracted by shiny objects, then those are the ones who eventually find the right business for sale.